Time for a look at some business news now. And Switzerland has voted against a proposal to stiffen penalties against Swiss-based multinationals if they violate human rights or harm the environment. The plan was rejected in Sunday's referendum. To tell us more, Yuka Royer is standing by. Yuka, what does all this mean for, Swiss companies and multinationals based there?
Well, Eve, it means, of course, that Swiss companies and big multinationals based in Switzerland have avoided facing the world's toughest corporate responsibility rules. Now, the proposed law would have made them liable for human rights and environmental abuses, even if they're committed by their contractors abroad. And victims would have been able to sue Swiss companies in Swiss courts. And now, victims in Sunday's referendum, though, 50.7% of voters actually said yes to the proposal by the Responsible Business Initiative. But it was still voted down because it didn't meet the other requirement of winning support from a majority of cantons in the country. It's the first time in decades that a Swiss vote has failed on regional grounds, despite winning popular support. And now the government's counter-proposal will now take effect, and it's less stringent, of course, but will still force companies to beef up and publicly report checks on their overseas operations and supply chains. And now, big companies' responsibilities over human rights and environmental abuses have long been a subject of debate worldwide. The United Nations adopted its official guiding principles on business and human rights back in 2011. And here in Europe, the European Commission will introduce new legislation next year to make human rights due diligence mandatory for EU companies. In Switzerland, it was a polarizing campaign. Businesses and the government lobbied against the plan, citing potential negative impact on the economy. Let's take a listen to Justice Minister Karin Keller-Sutter speaking about the referendum's outcome.
Although the voters have today spoken out against the path that the initiative wanted to take, they have not opposed the cause. The concern that Swiss companies should also respect people and the environment abroad. This concern was also recognised by the Federal Council and the Parliament.
Well, in Europe and the United States, businesses are struggling amid continued COVID-19 restrictions. In China, however, the world's manufacturing engine looks like it's starting to go back to full speed. Yuka.
That's right. Factory output in China grew at the fastest pace in more than 3 years in November. The official Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, released this Monday, rose to 52.1 this month, up from 51.4 in October. Now, above 50 means growth, so it saw an acceleration from the previous month even. China, of course, was the first to be affected by the COVID-19 crisis, but managed to contain it relatively quickly. And as the rest of the world needed more supplies, from personal protection gears to computer and home working needs, its factories have been, of course, churning out goods at full speed, and output is now back to pre-pandemic levels. Non-manufacturing PMI also rose this month, and China's economy is expected to grow almost 6% in the fourth quarter of this year, up from 4.9%, which was still already impressive in the third quarter.
And I imagine, Yuka, those figures having an impact on the stock markets.
Well, China's blue chip CSI 300 index rose to its highest level since June of 2015, so more than 5 years ago this Monday. And the Shanghai Composite also rose more than 1% earlier this Monday, before dropping below the flat line in the last hour or so. In the rest of Asia, shares generally slid after a strong finish last week. In Hong Kong, the decline was led by the energy sector after news of US blacklisting of China's national offshore gas and oil producer, CNOOC. Globally, though, investor sentiment remains high over the prospect of COVID vaccines.
Okay, Yuka, for now, thanks very much indeed. Yuka Royer there from our business desk. Moving on, and just days after being discovered, an almost 4-metre-high metal monolith that stood tall in the middle of nowhere in Utah, well, it's disappeared, leaving in its place a triangular piece of metal and a raft